The air hung thick, a suffocating tapestry woven from 1,000 clashing floral perfumes, animal-like musks, and the metallic tang of too many bodies in too small a space. From their concealed observation chamber, Zielar's optical sensors struggled to filter the overwhelming data. This was Earth, circa 1780, a period humans called the Ancien Régime, specifically the perfumed court of Versailles. A place where power was not just wielded, but quite literally scented, each noble attempting to out-odor the next, perhaps to mask the underlying squalor of a species yet to master basic hygiene. "Remarkable," breathed Viola, her vocalizer a low, resonant thrum, the sheer, unadulterated inefficiency of it all. Everything designed for visual spectacle, at the expense of functionality. Their current focus, human footwear. Elegant, yes. Intricately embroidered silk, buckles gleaming like captured starlight, small, impossibly high heels lifting the wearer precariously high above the polished floor. Yet Viola observed a female subject, resplendent in a gown that dwarfed her, stumble on the grand staircase. Her face momentarily contorted in a grimace of pain, quickly masked. Then she regained her balance with a visible tremor in her legs. No practical function. In fact, a profound detriment to mobility and stability. Yet, every single human in this opulent palace wore some variation. The higher the heel, the more elaborate the material, the greater the perceived status. A bizarre calculus of self-imposed handicap equaling social currency. Zielar, meanwhile, sifted through vast archived data streams, cross-referencing this period with later epochs. And here, observe this anomaly. Skinny jeans. Data from 21st century Earth. A fabric, often a blend of synthetic polymers, so impossibly tight, it visibly compresses the flesh. It restricts circulation. It causes numbness, even nerve damage in prolonged use, according to their own medical texts. Yet, these humans voluntarily encase themselves in it. Not for battle armor, not for environmental protection, but for fashion. His vocalizer dropped to a frequency indicating profound, almost existential confusion. Viola projected holographic schematics of human foot and leg anatomy onto the console. Their metatarsals are compressed in these shoes. Their digits are squeezed into unnatural points. Their stride is shortened, made awkward. Their very lymphatic system is challenged by these skinny jeans, leading to documented venous insufficiency. Why? What conceivable evolutionary advantage? Why would a species so demonstrably capable of brutal pragmatism intentionally hinder its own physiology for such abstract concepts? They had spent cycles analyzing human combat strategies, their remarkable adaptability in hostile environments, their stubborn, often irrational refusal to yield in the face of annihilation. Humans faced down cosmic horrors with makeshift weapons and rebuilt from the ashes of their own catastrophic conflicts. But this seemed beyond mere illogic. It was self-sabotage elevated to an art form. Zielar zoomed in on a young human male at the court, his elaborate, pointed shoes clearly pinching his toes, his heavily powdered wig surely itching beneath the oppressive warmth and oppressive scents. He flashed a brilliant, almost predatory smile, a glimpse of startling white teeth, as another human female giggled at something he said, her own high heels causing her to sway slightly. His discomfort, searingly obvious to the alien bioscanners, was entirely hidden behind a meticulously crafted mask of performative ease. A constant, low-level pain, endured with silent, stubborn pride. "Perhaps," Vela murmured, her four eye stalks swiveling slowly, considering the full, bizarre spectrum of human self-infliction. "Perhaps their famed resilience isn't just for external threats. Perhaps it evolved from enduring internal ones, self-inflicted ones." The grand ballroom pulsed with the calculated rhythm of courtly intrigue, a human spectacle of intricate dances and whispered conspiracies. From their covert observation post, Zielar and Viola watched a high-ranking human female, her silk gown a cascade of rich fabric, glide across the floor. Her movements, while practiced, were subtly constrained. Their bioscanners painted a stark picture beneath the finery. Toes compressed, circulation partially impeded. A faint sheen of perspiration indicating localized heat stress beneath multiple layers of clothing and elaborate coiffures. The shoes, Xylar. Their primary function, according to our initial assessment, should be protection and mobility. Yet these structures are the antithesis of both. Vala's ocular stalks narrowed, focusing on the human's feet. The tiny, elevated heels forced an unnatural arch, placing undue strain on the ankle and calf muscles. Every step is a micro-act of deliberate imbalance, a constant, low-level physical challenge. Xylar brought up historical data, and it's a constant, not merely an anomaly of this Versailles period. Even in what they term the industrial age, we see similar, self-imposed handicaps. Take the corset, designed to reshape the torso into an ideal form, often restricting lung capacity. Or the crinoline, a vast, unwieldy cage under their skirts, making navigation through doorways a Herculean task. He shuddered, a barely perceptible ripple in his energy field. It's as if they actively seek out ways to make their own lives harder. A young human male, dressed in brightly colored breeches so tight they creased painfully at the knee, laughed boisterously. Xylar's scanners registered the friction and pressure points. And the skinny jeans, Viola. In later epochs, these become almost ubiquitous. Fabrics so restrictive they cause actual skin lesions and nerve impingement. Yet, the wearers display these signs of discomfort not with distress, but with a strange, almost defiant pride. As if to say, I can endure this for aesthetics, therefore I am superior. Villa rotated a diagnostic image of a human foot, distorted by a period shoe. The cumulative effect of this intentional aesthetic discomfort. It would be debilitating for most species. But humans? They simply adapt. Their bodies form calluses. Their muscles learn to compensate for poor posture. Their nervous systems desensitize to chronic pressure. They simply absorb the pain. It's a bizarre display of resilience, Xylar agreed, his voice a low hum. Not just against external threats, but against pain themselves. They internalize the struggle. They make their very clothing a test of endurance. And the more absurd the discomfort, the greater the status associated with enduring it without complaint. The human male, having finished his witty remark, shifted his weight. A minute tremor visible through the tight breeches. A barely suppressed wince that vanished instantly. His smile never wavered. They're not just surviving the environment, Viola concluded, her tone tinged with a new, unsettling awe. They're surviving sort of fashions. They're proving their strength by demonstrating how much discomfort they can willfully accept and still project an image of effortless grace. It is, undeniably, a form of masochism. But viewed through their lens, perhaps, it's something else entirely. A bizarre, self-testing, self-validating assertion of control. A proclamation that says, I choose this hardship, and I will overcome it, simply because I exist. The sheer, raw audacity of it, of finding power in self-imposed suffering, was a concept that shook the very foundations of alien logic. These creatures truly were an enigma, their resilience honed by the most unexpected and painful of battles. The delicate thud resonated through the ancient human dwelling, a sound so utterly alien, so profoundly unnatural, it seized Xylar and Viola's attention instantly. It wasn't the confident stride of a protected foot, nor the clumsy stumble of a fashion-bound one. It was a careful, almost painful placement, each movement a conscious act of extreme balance. This was Earth. Several centuries prior to Versailles, in a culture known for its profound, baffling aesthetics. Reanalyzing previous data points, Xylar pulsed, his primary sensor array locked onto the source. Focus. Subject designation, Lotus Weaver. Female, approximately 32 Terran cycles. Viola's optical sensors zoomed. Beneath layers of exquisitely embroidered silk, what should have been a normal human foot was grotesquely deformed. Her bioscanners showed bones fractured, ligaments permanently stretched and torn, the arch of the foot bent so acutely it seemed to fold back on itself. The toes, all 4 outer digits, were curled under the sole, fused into a malformed stump. The exquisite little shoe, adorned with pearls and intricate stitching, was not designed for protection, nor even for the precarious elevation of earlier observations. It was a gilded prison, a literal cage of fabric and bone. By the stars, Viola breathed, her vocalizer dropping to an almost imperceptible hum of pure disbelief. They did this to themselves, willingly. Or, rather, it was done to them, for societal reasons. The process itself, a slow, agonizing deformation, beginning in childhood. For what purpose, Xylar? What conceivable evolutionary advantage could arise from rendering oneself almost entirely immobile? Xylar brought up historical texts, translated with difficulty. Golden lotus, 3-inch arch, beautifully bound feet. The records speak of it as a mark of beauty, of status. The smaller and more painfully contorted the foot, the higher the perceived attractiveness and social standing. He overlaid a diagnostic projection showing the internal bone structure, a horror of shattered metatarsals and crushed phalanges. Every step taken by these individuals is a step through chronic pain, a constant reminder of their beauty. They watched the lotus weaver navigate a simple corridor. Each motion was slow, deliberate. Her weight shifted meticulously onto the heel and the ball of her foot, avoiding the crushed toes. Her hands often reached out to brace herself against walls or furniture. Yet, her face, framed by dark hair and serene composure, betrayed no sign of the immense discomfort her bio-readings confirmed. Her smile, when she greeted another human, was placid, almost ethereal. A masterclass in suppressed agony. Our earlier hypothesis of masochistic evolution seems insufficient, Viola mused, her internal processors churning through the disturbing new data. This isn't merely enduring discomfort. It's asterisk, creating profound, crippling disability, then mastering the art of functioning within that disability. Not for survival against predators, not for resource acquisition, for abstract concepts of beauty and status. Xylar felt a cold, alien dread seep into his core. They don't just tolerate pain, Villa. They weaponize it. They forge it into a social currency. The sheer will required to endure such a transformation, and then to live a lifetime with it, moving with such deliberate grace. It suggests a species that bends reality to its will, even the reality of its own body. They twist agony into art and disability into a perverse form of power. And in that profound, unsettling truth, the aliens saw a new, terrifying facet of humanity. Not just their strength, but their capacity to redefine strength itself, even if it meant breaking themselves in the process. The air within the ancient dwelling was still, thick with the scent of aged wood and delicate incense, but it was the sound that truly captivated Xylar and Viola. Not a loud clang, nor a confident tread, but a soft, almost imperceptible patter on the polished stone floor. Each movement was a calculated act of precision, a slow, deliberate placing of weight, as if the human was navigating an invisible minefield. Target designated. The Jade Maiden. Xylar pulsed, his primary sensor array locked. Female, approximately 27 Terran cycles. Status, lotus foot. Subject, class 3. Viola, optical sensors sharpened, projecting a bioscan overlay. Beneath the exquisite layers of embroidered silk and soft slippers, the reality was a gruesome symphony of anatomical defiance. Bones were not merely compressed, but severely fractured and malformed. The arch of the foot bent so acutely it looked like a twisted knot. The smaller toes were curled beneath the sole, permanently fused into a grotesque stump, the skin pale and stretched tight. Every ligament, every tendon, was under immense, chronic stress. Yet, the woman's face, framed by dark, lustrous hair, remained serene, her gaze distant, almost ethereal. There was no outward tremor, no audible gasp of pain, only that careful, almost poetic the mentis. "It's a constant battle, isn't it?" Viola murmured, her vocalizer a low, disbelieving hum. Every single step is a deliberate act of balancing agony with grace. And for what, Xylar? Our historical data confirms this practice, this foot binding, endured for 1,000 Terran years. 1,000 years of self-inflicted crippling pain passed down through generations. The sheer, unyielding will required. Xylar brought up a comparison image. A 21st century human, clad in skinny jeans and high-heeled boots. The data streams pulsed with nerve compression, blood flow restriction, musculoskeletal strain. Not as severe as the lotus foot, certainly, but undeniably, voluntarily painful. It's a continuum, Vila. From the constricted waists of the corset era to the fashion footwear of the modern age, humans consistently choose discomfort. They don't just tolerate pain, they integrate it. They make it part of their being, a test of their own fortitude. The lotus foot is simply the most extreme manifestation of this baffling drive. The Jade Maiden paused, a servant presenting her with a cup of aromatic tea. Her posture was flawless, her hands delicate as she accepted the offering. Yet the bioscanner showed her feet, encased in their silken prisons, were a constant source of agony, a burning thrum of nerve endings screaming for release. The sheer mental control to maintain such composure, to project such effortless beauty while enduring such brutal internal reality, was a chilling spectacle. It was a silent declaration, a raw, undeniable testament to her strength. They're not just surviving their environment or their own conflicts, Vila finally articulated, a tremor of awe in her voice. They're surviving themselves. They're mastering the art of enduring self-imposed torment and transforming it into a display of status, of resilience. The unspoken language of their pain becomes their poetry, their defiance. Xylar watched the Jade Maiden take another slow, deliberate step, her bound foot, a symbol of both profound suffering and immense, terrifying willpower. They don't just endure pain, Vila. They command it. They mold it, shape it, and make it serve them. To be human is to not only survive the unendurable, but to choose it, simply to prove that you can. Our initial theory, masochists, it feels too simplistic now. It's not just about pleasure from pain, it's about a raw, defiant assertion of self in the face of suffering. And that, in its own horrifying way, is a power we can barely comprehend. The biting wind whipped across the barren, rocky settlement, carrying the harsh tang of salt and the constant, rhythmic thump of an axe. This was Earth, much later than the gilded cages of Versailles, but a different kind of self-imposed hardship. This was a Puritan colony, circa 1640. And the discomfort, Xylar and Vila quickly observed, wasn't about ostentatious display. It was about something far more insidious. Conformity. Observe the neckwear, Vila. Xylar pulsed, his optical sensors focused on a human male sawing at a tree trunk. The man's face was grim, etched with the privations of a harsh existence. Around his neck, a stiff, starched linen ruff, several inches wide, pressed tightly against his jugular, restricting natural movement. His clothing, a drab, heavy wool, was ill-suited for the dynamic work, hindering his movements. His shoes were thick utilitarian leather but crudely made, offering little support or comfort. A contrast to the beauty of the lotus weaver, or the status of Versailles, Velia noted, her vocalizer a low hum of analysis. Here, the aesthetic is one of deliberate plainness, almost a repudiation of comfort. Yet, the self-imposed restriction remains. That ruff. It serves no protective purpose. In fact, it obstructs peripheral vision and causes friction against the skin. Her bioscanners registered a subtle reddening of the man's neck, a clear indication of irritation. The man grunted with effort, sweat beading on his brow despite the cold, but he never touched the ruff. His movements were precise, efficient, yet tinged with an underlying stiffness. It was as if every part of his attire was a small, constant test, a reminder of his chosen path. Xylar sifted through the colony's archived communal data, their digital records filled with sermons and admonishments. Their faith demands this, a rejection of, vanity of, fleshly delights. But in doing so, they embrace a different kind of pain, a self-flagellation through discomfort. These rough fabrics, the restrictive neckwear, the stiff, unyielding hats, they are not practical for survival in this brutal climate. They are, instead, a constant low-level physical penance. He brought up a holographic comparison. A. Skinny jeans, wearer, hundreds of years in their future. The same underlying current. A rejection of natural comfort, a deliberate choice of restriction. They, skinny jeans, 4, style, the Puritan rough, 4, piety. Different motivations, same, baffling outcome. This is not about attracting a mate or displaying wealth, Vila mused, her multiple eye stalks swiveling. It's about demonstrating adherence to a rigid, abstract ideal. The discomfort becomes a badge of honor, a public declaration of their moral superiority, a proof of their spiritual fortitude. The axe finally bit through the last fibers of wood, the tree crashing to the ground with a resounding "the" that shook the frozen earth. The man leaned on his axe, breathing heavily, his chest heaving under the restrictive wool. His hands, calloused and raw, never strayed to loosen the rough. His gaze, when he looked out at the bleak, unforgiving landscape, was stoic, unyielding. He had chosen this. He was enduring it. They adapt to the harshness of their world, Zylar concluded, a strange mix of dread and admiration in his tone. And if their beliefs demand harshness, they adapt to that too. They create their own. The discomfort isn't a flaw, it's a feature. A constant, grinding friction that proves they are worthy, that they can endure. They find power not just in overcoming external challenges, but in creating stunning internal ones, and then proving their mastery over them. These humans, they truly are a species forged in the fires of their own making, pain and all. The scratch of starched linen against skin, a constant, low-grade abrasion, seemed to permeate the very air of the Puritan meeting house. It was a sensory assault Zylar and Vila had come to associate with this austere human era, a stark contrast to the perfumed courts or the silken, agonizing grace of the lotus-footed. Here, discomfort was not a fashion statement, but a moral imperative. The subject, a female designated, Martha Thorne, is engaged in communal prayer, Zylar pulsed, his sensors mapping the interior of the cramped wooden building. Her posture, rigid and unyielding, was amplified by her attire. A high-necked, unyielding bodice, cinched tightly around her torso, restricted her breathing to shallow, controlled movements. Her wrists were encircled by stiff, white cuffs that chafed with every slight adjustment of her clasped hands. And around her neck, that ubiquitous ruff, a starched, pleated barrier that forced her head to remain unnaturally upright, her gaze fixed forward, never straying. No adornment, no overt display of wealth. Vila observed, her vocalizer a low, analytical hum. Yet the sheer structure of the clothing remains designed to restrict, to impose physical discipline. The tightness of the bodice, the stiffness of the cuffs, the constricting ruff. They are all chosen elements, Zylar. Not for battle, not for protection from the elements, but to enforce a specific, desired physical state. Martha Thorne shifted, a faint ripple of discomfort passing through her, quickly suppressed. Her face, pale and serious, betrayed nothing but devout concentration. The bioscanners, however, told a different story. Irritated skin, restricted blood flow in the wrists, a subtle tension in her neck muscles from the enforced rigidity. It was a constant, low-level physical torment, chosen and endured. Zylar sifted through the Puritan Society's philosophical texts. They believe that physical discomfort purifies the soul. That by denying the phyla sholi shola sholi 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 and holy sholi 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 sholi. This clothing, it's an architectural extension of their morality. The starch and stiff fabric are not just materials, they are a physical manifestation of their rigid internal codes. Each uncomfortable seam, each chafing edge, a constant reminder of their commitment to an abstract ideal. He brought up images of skinny jeans, again. The impulse, Vila, is eerily similar. The denial of natural comfort, the voluntary constriction of the body. One for style, the other for sanctity. but both demonstrating a human willingness to endure pain for a chosen, deeply held belief or status. They transform a biological imperative for comfort into an opportunity for self-mastery. Viola rotated her multiple eye stalks, taking in the entire quiet scene of solemn, suffering devotion. They don't just endure pain, they construct it. They build it into their daily lives, into the very fabric of their existence, not as a weakness, but as a pillar of their strength, a testament to their unwavering will. These humans, they don't just survive hardship, they manufacture it just to prove they can conquer it. It's a terrifying, beautiful, and utterly unpredictable assertion of what it means to be human. And in that stark, unyielding architecture of their clothing, the aliens began to grasp the profound, almost frightening depth of humanity's capacity for self-discipline, even when that discipline meant a constant, internal war. The frenetic thrum of a distant bass drum vibrated through Xylar's auditory sensors, quickly joined by the shrill, insistent wail of a brass instrument, and, most perplexing of all, the rhythmic clack-clack-clack of hundreds of tiny, hard objects. This was Earth, circa 1925, an era humans called the Roaring Twenties. From their observation post, it was clear. Something fundamental had shifted. The stifling formality, the constricting layers, the crippling shoes, they were largely gone. But the self-inflicted discomfort? That, the aliens quickly realized, had merely shapeshifted. Observe the primary subject, designated Flapper Alice. Viola pulsed, her optical sensors locking onto a human female, moving with astonishing, almost violent energy across a brightly lit dance floor. Alice's garments were drastically different from their previous observations. A loose, knee-length dress revealing much of her lower leg and arms. No corsets, no ruffs, no foot bindings. A rebellion, pure and simple. But then came the beads, countless strands of them, glittering glass, heavy and long, draped around her neck and torso. With every spin, every kick, every frantic shake, these decorative chains swung with undeniable momentum. Xylar's bioscanners registered the localized Terhendred and Tumpak trauma. The beads, intended for visual effect, were slapping against her bare skin, leaving faint temporary red marks. Minor, yes, but constant. Yet, Alice's face, flushed with exertion and a wide, joyful grin, betrayed no hint of pain. She was utterly immersed in the chaotic, exhilarating rhythm. They shed the cages of silk and starch only to embrace a new form of percussive self-flagellation, Xylar mused, his vocalizer tinged with profound confusion. The tight-laced boots and constraining breeches of earlier periods have been replaced by these looser, but still demonstrably uncomfortable, adornments. The mancha shoes, Mary Jane, shoes she wears, while allowing greater mobility for dancing, still offer little actual support and will surely cause localized epidermal abrasion with this level of sustained activity. Viola focused on Alice's face, her eyes sparkling, her short, bobbed hair bouncing with each movement. They call this freedom, Xylar. Freedom from the previous constraints of their society, expressed through their attire and their movement. Yet, even in this rebellion, they seem unable to fully embrace true physical comfort or logical self-preservation. The sustained impact of those beads, the strain on their musculature from such prolonged, vigorous activity, it's a chosen burden, a new test. Another dancer, a human male, in similarly unrestrictive but still stylized attire, spun Alice around. His own shoes, though less ornate, were thin-soled, offering minimal cushioning against the hard floor. He, too, was sweating profusely, yet his grin mirrored hers. They weren't fighting against physical discomfort. They were dancing with it. They were using it as part of their joyous, defiant self-expression. "Our theory persists," Xylar finally stated, a grim certainty entering his tone. "The masochism isn't about pleasure and pain, but about a deep, ingrained need to prove their capacity for endurance, to themselves and to each other, whether for status, for piety, or now, for sheer rebellious joy. They find ways to make their physical existence more challenging. To be human, it seems, is to constantly push the boundaries of what you can tolerate, to define your very existence by your capacity to overcome not just external threats, but the very burdens you choose to place upon your own flesh. They are a species that finds power in the self-inflicted test, even when that test is just the joyful sting of 1,000 dancing beads." The thick, acrid haze of countless burning plant sticks, combined with the sharp, sweet tang of fermented grains, assaulted Zeller and Viola as sensory receptors. This wasn't the cloying perfume of Versailles, nor the sterile wood of the Puritan meeting house. This was Earth, 1925, a hidden speakeasy, pulsating with illicit energy, a testament to humanity's uncanny ability to defy even its own laws. And the fashion? It was an unraveling, a glorious, defiant rejection of almost everything that had come before. Subject designated: Jazz Lily. Zeller pulsed, his optics fixed on a human female. Her hair, cropped short and gleaming, framed a face alight with laughter. She held a glass of the potent, fermented grain, inhaling the plant stick smoke with an air of casual defiance. Her dress, short and shimmering with sequins, swung freely around her knees. The liberation of the knee, indeed. No corsets, no ruffs, no foot bindings. Freedom, or so it seemed. Viola's bioscanners, however, told a more nuanced story. The alcohol, consumed in copious amounts, was a known neurotoxin. The smoke from the burning plant stick, a carcinogen. These were not external threats, but chosen ingestions, embraced with fervent enthusiasm. And her footwear, thin-strapped, delicate heels that lifted her just enough to strain the arch, but were completely impractical for the bustling, often chaotic environment. She danced, her movements wild and free, but every so often she stumbled, recovering with a practiced flick of her hand. A micro-discomfort, accepted. They have shed the physical strictures, Viola mused, her vocalizer a low, analytical hum. The corsets are gone, the lotus shoes eradicated, the ruffs discarded. Yet they willingly ingest poisons, deliberately damage their own respiratory systems, and continue to choose footwear that compromises their stability and ergonomic function. Not for status, not for piety, but for fun, for rebellion. Zeller brought up data on human recreational activities. They consistently pursue activities that push their physical limits, often resulting in injury. They consume substances that alter their perception, often with detrimental long-term health effects. And their fashion, even at its most liberated, still presents a challenge. These shoes, designed to elevate, not protect. These dresses, revealing enough to cause discomfort in colder climates, or vulnerability in crowded spaces. It's a different form of self-imposed burden. Jazz Lily laughed, a sharp, joyous sound that cut through the music and the smoke. She clapped her hands, the delicate, decorative rings on her fingers catching the light. Her eyes, slightly glazed from the fermented grain, shone with an almost primal exhilaration. She was not just enduring discomfort. She was celebrating it, wrapping it in a cloak of joy and defiance. The underlying masochism, the aliens realized, wasn't gone. It had simply evolved, morphed into something more subtle, more pervasive. They're not just proving they can survive the pain, Viola concluded, a note of almost terrified awe in her voice. They're proving they can thrive quarter-stomachs with it. They twist their own physiological vulnerabilities into an expression of liberty. The danger, the discomfort, the deliberate defiance of logical self-preservation. It's all part of the human experience of freedom. They aren't just masochists, Zeller. They are defiant, self-experimenting titans who define their very existence by how much they can endure, not just from the universe, but from themselves. And in that, in their glorious, self-destructive freedom, lies a power we will never truly comprehend. The oppressive silence of the human ritual was broken only by the soft crunch of gravel underfoot, and the distant tolling of a heavy bell. This was Earth, mid-19th century, a time humans termed the Victorian era, and the emotion permeating the scene was thick, palpable, and profoundly unsettling. Grief. Zeller and Viola observed a procession, somber and slow, heading towards a designated burial ground. Focus primary opticals on subject, Eleanor Vance, Viola pulsed, her vocalizer a low, mournful hum, strangely echoing the human atmosphere. Female, approximately 45 Terran cycles. Status: widow. Note the headwear. Eleanor Vance moved with a stately, almost spectral grace. Her entire form was draped in heavy, jet-black fabric, but it was the veil that truly seized the aliens' attention. A thick, opaque mesh of dark material covered her face completely, extending down to her waist. Her bioscanners showed vision severely restricted, peripheral awareness almost entirely negated. The heavy fabric trapped heat, causing localized thermal stress around her head and face. Each breath pulled the mesh subtly against her lips and nostrils. It was, quite simply, an intentional act of sensory deprivation, adding an almost suffocating layer to her already profound emotional distress. This is not about beauty, nor overt status, nor even rebellion, Xylar observed, his internal processor struggling with the new paradigm. This is a visible, tactile manifestation of sorrow. They are literally 20 wearing their pain, but why amplify the suffering? Why choose to be physically encumbered and sensorily deprived in a moment of such profound internal vulnerability? Her dress, Xylar noted, was also a meticulously constructed prison. Beneath the voluminous skirts, a rigid crinoline frame restricted her ability to sit or move naturally. A tightly laced corset cinched her waist to an unnatural degree, impeding lung capacity and circulation. Her shoes, though less overtly impractical than the high heels of Versailles, were stiff, unyielding leather, designed more for durability and solemnity than comfort. Every element of her attire, from the soles of her feet to the top of her veiled head, screamed of restriction, of burden. "It's a declaration," Viola finally articulated, her multiple eye stalks swiveling, trying to grasp the immense, complex human psychology on display. A public display of the depth of their anguish. By choosing to wear such restrictive, uncomfortable, even painful garments, they are physically embodying their internal suffering. It's a way of saying, my pain is so profound, I must make my very body a testament to it. Eleanor Vance stumbled momentarily on an uneven patch of ground, her vision obscured by the veil, her movements hampered by the dress. A gloved hand, another layer of discomfort, instinctively reached out to steady herself, but she quickly recovered, her stride unwavering. Not a sound of complaint, not a flinch, visible through the oppressive fabric, only that silent, grim determination. They endure the internal agony of loss. And then, they add to it, Xylar breathed, the implication settling like a chill. They don't just survive grief. They choose to amplify its physical expression, to make themselves a living monument to their own pain, and still, they persist. They walk, they function, they mourn with an almost terrifying resilience. Our masochist theory, it's evolving. It's not about finding pleasure in pain. It's about finding a strange, defiant power in mastering it, even when that pain is self-inflicted and emotionally devastating. To be human is to not only bear the unbearable, but to dress it, and still keep moving. The heavy crepe of the gown, a fabric designed to absorb all light, seemed to absorb all sound, all joy within the somber Victorian drawing room. Days had bled into weeks, then into months, since the funeral, yet the human female, Eleanor Vance, remained cloaked in the same suffocating darkness. From their hidden vantage, Xylar and Viola observed her, not in a procession now, but in the quiet, desolate solitude of her own home. The mourning period Villa pulsed, her vocalizer a low, almost mournful hum. Our archives indicate this attire, this nihilist state of being, could persist for years. The thick veils, the restrictive corsets, the heavy layers of black, not just for a day, but for a prolonged fraction of their lifespan. Eleanor moved, a rustle of dark fabric, as she picked up a book. Her movements were stiff, practiced. Xylar's bioscanners showed her still wearing the tightly laced corset beneath the heavy gown. The subtle pressure on her diaphragm, the restricted expansion of her lungs, was a constant low-level physical strain. Her shoes, utilitarian and devoid of ornamentation, still offered little ergonomic benefit, her feet aching from the prolonged standing and the weight of the clothes. It was a self-imposed siege, a life lived within a fabric prison. She is not just dressed in black. She is asterisk erased by it, Xylar mused, his optical sensors noting the way the dark voluminous layers obscured her form, made her almost indistinct against the deep shadows of the room. The veil, though now lifted from her face indoors, still hangs, a symbolic barrier. The intent is clear: to visually withdraw from society, to make her sorrow visible and her personal identity almost invisible. But the physical cost, Villa. It's immense, sustained, and voluntarily borne. He brought up a holographic image of a human in skinny jeans from the 21st century. The same underlying current was there, a chosen restriction, a subtle discomfort for an abstract purpose. The skinny jeans, compressed and constricted for style and belonging. The mourning attire compressed and constricted for grief and social expectation. Both in their own way were statements of endurance. They transform their very bodies into memorials, Viola finally articulated, a note of profound awe in her voice. The corset, restricting the breath, mirroring the tightness in her chest from sorrow. The heavy fabric, a physical weight, matching the emotional burden. They don't shy away from their grief. They clothe themselves in it, embody it, and then, miraculously, they continue. They eat, they read, they live, all while shackled by their chosen, physical representation of loss. Eleanor sighed, a deep, weary sound, and adjusted the heavy fabric of her sleeve. Her gaze fell upon a framed portrait, a subtle softening in her eyes, a flicker of raw human emotion. Then, the mask of endurance settled back. She closed the book, her movements still precise, still measured, still burdened. They don't just survive grief, Zylar concluded, the sheer audacity of humanity settling deep within his understanding. They embrace it, wear it like armor, and move through life with it, day after agonizing day. This isn't just masochism. It's a testament to a species that finds power not just in fighting external foes, but in mastering their own internal landscapes of pain, sorrow, and discomfort. To be human is to find a way to carry the unbearable and still stand, often in the most uncomfortable of shoes, simply because they choose to. It's a defiance of biology, a triumph of will, and utterly terrifying. The rhythmic clack-clack-clack of hard-soled shoes on polished linoleum, punctuated by the insistent ring of a rotary phone and the distant hiss of a printing machine. This was Earth, circa 1985, a landscape of towering corporate structures and a new, bewildering aesthetic, power dressing. Zylar and Viola found themselves observing a sleek, glass-and-steel environment, starkly different from Versailles, the Puritan colonies, or the Flappers' speakeasy. Yet, the self-imposed human discomfort persisted, simply evolving into new, baffling forms. Subject designated: Executive Sarah. Zylar pulsed, his optical sensors locked on a human female striding purposefully down a long corridor. Her posture was unnaturally rigid, her shoulders artificially broadened by immense, stiff pads sewn into her jacket. Her hair, sculpted into an unmoving helmet by chemical agents, seemed impervious to gravity. And her footwear, sharp, pointed high heels that lifted her body into an acute, almost painful angle, forcing her calves to strain with every step. The sheer structural inflexibility of it all, Vila mused, her vocalizer a low, analytical hum. These shoulder pads are not protective armor. They restrict natural arm movement. The material of her suit is stiff, designed for form over flexibility, and those shoes, they offer zero ergonomic benefit. They compromise balance, risk ankle injury, and redistribute body weight in a profoundly inefficient manner, leading to long-term skeletal strain. Her bioscanners confirmed localized tension in Sarah's lower back and a constant, low throb in her foot bones. Sarah paused, a grimace flickering across her face as she shifted her weight. It was momentary, instantly suppressed, replaced by a steely, unyielding gaze as she addressed another human. Her voice was sharp, commanding. The discomfort was there, undeniable, yet entirely subsumed by an overwhelming aura of authority. Zylar brought up historical data, cross-referencing with previous eras. The motivation here appears to be dominance, authority. By presenting themselves in these rigid, almost architectural garments, they project an image of unyielding strength. The discomfort is a byproduct, perhaps even a component, of this projection. It demonstrates a capacity to endure, to suffer in silence, all for the sake of asserting control in their social hierarchy. This is the skinny jeans impulse amplified for the corporate battlefield. He projected a holographic overlay of a Victorian corset. The internal constriction of the corset, the external rigidity of the ruff, the disabling grace of the lotus foot, and now the imposing uncomfortable stiffness of power dressing. The tools change, but the core human drive remains. To physically challenge themselves, to embrace discomfort, and to make that endurance a statement. They make their very bodies a message. Viola watched Executive Sarah continue her stride, her high heels clicking with unwavering rhythm despite the physiological toll. It's a bizarre form of self-actualization, Zaylar. They don't just tolerate the burden of these clothes, they weaponize it. They harness the discomfort to project an image of invincibility. It is, in essence, a chosen form of psychological warfare waged against themselves and against their peers. The pain isn't the goal, but the proof that they are strong enough to achieve the goal, regardless of the cost. Indeed, Zaylar concluded, a strange mix of awe and unease in his tone. They don't just endure pain, they sculpt it, shape it into a tool, a symbol. They build monuments to their own resilience, not out of stone, but out of their own suffering and the restrictive fabrics they choose to wear. These humans, they truly are a species that finds power not just in overcoming overwhelming odds, but in making their own odds more overwhelming and still winning. The sterile, air-conditioned chill of the corporate high-rise seemed to penetrate Zaylar's sensors, a stark, almost oppressive environment. Here, the hum of fluorescent lighting and the distant click of keyboards formed the soundtrack to a new human drama, the relentless pursuit of professional dominance. And Executive Sarah, from their hidden vantage, was a central figure in this baffling tableau of ambition and self-imposed hardship. Her garments, Viola pulsed, her optical sensors analyzing Sarah's form as she navigated a bustling open-plan office. Constructed almost entirely from synthetic polymers, polyester, rayon, nylon. Materials designed for durability and a rigid, unyielding aesthetic, not for natural comfort or breathability. Our bioscanners register increased skin temperature, localized irritation, and poor ventilation beneath the fabric. Sarah's power suit was an elaborate construction. Her shoulders, still exaggerated by internal pads, created an imposing, almost adversarial silhouette. Her skirt, though not as physically restrictive as a crinoline, was tailored so precisely it limited her stride, forcing a controlled, almost stiff walk. And the high heels, Zaylar watched as her ankles, visibly taut, battled for stability on the polished floor, each click a tiny testament to her unwavering resolve. The thin, synthetic fabric of her pantyhose created a subtle, constant pressure, a barely there constriction from ankle to waist. The absence of traditional armor is notable, Zaylar observed, referencing vast archives of human warfare. Yet, this attire functions as a psychological one. The discomfort, the synthetic confinement, the deliberate physical inconvenience, it's all part of an illusion of invincibility. By presenting herself as unyielding, unbothered by these physical impositions, she projects an image of utter control. It's an unspoken challenge to her peers. I can endure this, can you? Sarah stopped at a colleague's desk, her expression unreadable, her voice calm but firm. The bioscanners showed her calf muscles subtly trembling from the prolonged strain of the heels, her brow faintly creased with a suppressed ache. Yet, her eyes held only focus, her posture only unwavering authority. It was a masterclass in internal fortitude, a silent battle waged on two fronts: the external world of corporate competition and the internal landscape of her own discomfort. Viola brought up a comparative data set, the skinny jeans of a later era. The same drive to constrain, to present a streamlined or powerful form, regardless of physiological cost. The materials may differ, the specific points of constriction vary, but the fundamental human need to demonstrate resilience through physical challenge remains constant. From bound feet to constricted waists, from itchy ruffs to synthetic armor, they never cease. They don't just endure the uncomfortable, they weaponize it, Zaylar concluded. a profound understanding dawning. They turned physical strain into a statement, a declaration of their willpower. The pain is not merely tolerated, it is integrated into their identity, a crucial component of their perceived strength. To be human is to constantly redefine the battlefield, often within the confines of their own clothing, and to emerge victorious simply by persisting. They are a species that sees a challenge not in external threats but in the very act of existing, and they meet it with a brutal, self-inflicted elegance that is utterly, terrifyingly their own.